Let's start in the beginning. They say Chidima Adechina was born in Soweto in 2001. Okay, I know you guys, you follow, and you might want to start disagreeing with me. I'm talking about what has been reported first. So hold it right there. It does say that Chidima Adechina was born in Soweto in 2001 to a Nigerian father and a Mozambican mother. And her mother is Annabella Rungu. Being born in South African soil does not automatically make you a South African citizen. Your parents' status matters. At the time of her birth, neither of her parents held a South African citizenship, nor a permanent residence. How did she end up with South African documents at all? That's where it gets serious. In 2024, as we know, South African Department of Home Affairs launched an investigation which was triggered by the public. A backlash after Adechina became Miss South Africa finalist. And they announced preliminary findings. Rungu may have committed fraud and identity theft back in 2001. Allegedly using the identity of a real South African woman to obtain an ID and registered her daughter's birth. Home Affairs was explicit on one point. Chidima herself could not have been involved because she was an infant. Nobody disputes that fact. Nobody disputes that part. But here's the sentence that should stop you cold. Officials had said the real South African woman whose identity was allegedly used, she was left unable to register her own child in her own name. Her identity had effectively been duplicated in the system. I want that to sit. Let that sit for a second. And as of today, as of today, we still don't know her name. Nobody talks about her. Why? Is it because her suffering doesn't mean anything? Nobody talks about her. Once the news about the fraud allegation broke, the backlash was so vicious against Chidima. It was immediate. A lot of it xenophobic, questioning her Nigerian heritage rather than the allegations against her mother. Right? She withdrew from Miss South Africa, citing her family saved. Nigeria welcomed her with open arms. She went on to win Miss Nigeria, which she later on was even placed on Miss Universe as a runner-up. For a while, that looked like the end of the story. It definitely looked like the end of the story. Messy chapter, graceful exit, and a win on the other side. But it wasn't the end. Definitely, it wasn't the end. This is where I want you to slow down because of the many public opinions, public conversations. A lot of public conversation blur two completely different timelines, and they blur them together. A timeline on 2001, a baby allegedly registered using a stolen identity. Not her fault, definitely not her fault. Nobody credible dispute this. Timeline number 2, 2024 onward, an adult making her own decisions. An adult, I mean a fully grown adult making her own decisions. According to South African Home Affairs Minister, after his South African documents were invalidated, Chidima obtained a Nigerian passport. She then applied for a South African visitor's visa, and that application was rejected. Officials say because she submitted a fraudulent bank statement and she didn't even appeal it. Okay? A fraudulent bank statement. The whole Miss Universe runner-up submitting a fraudulent bank statement. Okay? Hold that thought. She was then declared a prohibited person in December 2024. Under South African immigration law, that status means no visa, no permit, full stop. That's what it means. And yet, officials alleged she re-entered South Africa anyway, crossing at the Libongo border post from Mozambique, presenting herself as a South African citizen, using a passport she still had in her possession. She later applied for what's called a letter of good cause, essentially asking for an exception, and that was rejected too. Notice what's happening here. The she was just a baby defense, which is completely valid for 2001, does not apply to any of this. It does not apply to any of this. This is a grown woman, a law student, allegedly submitting a fraudulent bank statement. And not only that, using a document her own government had already flagged as invalid. And now, and on the legal question of whether she even had the right, did she even have the right to hold on to that passport once it was invalidated? She didn't. South African law is direct on this. If a document does not correctly reflect your legal status, you're legally obliged to hand it over back to Home Affairs or to South African government. Refusing isn't a gray area. It's an offense on its own. Refusing to hand over that passport, it's an offense on its own. You've heard me. I've repeated. Now, because this case leaves half in the courtroom and half on social media, let's do some myths busting. Let's start with a claim. Photos surfaced showing Chidima at a Nigerian primary school. They were suggesting she wasn't really never raised in South Africa. There's a real photo from her own Instagram showing her as a small child at a school in Lagos. That picture is genuine, but a separate viral claim that an old photo proved she was older than what she says fell apart almost immediately. Eagle-eyed users spotted what looked like a South African school certificate in the same image, and the conversation shifted. The conversation shifted from she's lying about her age to this post is spreading misinformation. Sit with that. There's a lesson here for us and for you listeners. This case, it generates documentation, court statements, parliament records, alongside an unverified social post. We're going to stick to what's confirmed by the courts or officials. Let's just flag clearly anything that's just circulating online. Here's the part of the story that I think deserves the most airtime. That I think deserves most of the airtime and gets the least. Here's the one. There's a real South African woman whose identity was stolen. It was stolen 25 years ago. According to officials, she couldn't register her own child. Can you imagine not being able to register your own child because your identity was stolen? An immigration attorney involved in this, the attorney calls it exactly what it is. Not just about one woman, but about what happened. What happens when identity systems break down? Who pays the price? I'm asking you, my listeners, who pays the price? She has never been named in any of the reporting. I'm still here to hear or see what she has to say about all of this, because she's just a South African, a xenophobic South African, regardless of the fact that her identity was stolen and she could not even register her own child. We don't know her outcome. We don't know if her child was ever properly registered. What school access looked like for her family, for that child, what school access looked like, whether they ever got access to grants or SASA or healthcare, whether they've been, to grants and healthcare that they were entitled to. Some commentators have pointed out that stolen identity could have blocked someone from welfare support, medical care, education, and she could have been blocked for years. And what was happening with her child in South Africa, nobody wants to ask about that. Even our Nigerian counterparts, they don't want to ask about that, because all they believe is that we are xenophobic or Afrophobic. If we're gonna start asking what happened to her because of Chidima's mother stealing her identity, what happened to her unregistered child, we're gonna be called xenophobic or Afrophobic. And wait for it. In the meantime, courts, immigration officers, prosecutors, and the international diplomats, they have spent 2 years on enormous public resources. And what are they doing with those? On an alleged beneficiary for that exact fraud. A woman officials agree bear no responsibility for her original crime. She bears no responsibility for her original crime. But guess what? Courts, immigration officers, prosecutors, they are all international diplomats. They have spent 2 years of enormous public resources on that alleged beneficiary of that fraud. So here's the uncomfortable question. If Chidima ultimately wins this case and keeps her South African status, if she wins this case and keeps her South African status, what she's keeping is something that came from someone else's loss. She may be completely blameless under the law. She may be completely blameless under the law, but legally blameless. But legally blameless and the victim was made whole are two totally different outcomes. Legally blameless and the victim was made whole are two different outcomes. They are two different outcomes. Only one of them had all the public attention. Only one of them got the support from us as South Africans. It is time that the woman whose identity was stolen by Chidima, she gets us to be her voices if we have to be. She needs to get our support. Because I can just imagine as a mom, if I'm unable to register my child cannot get any benefit from the government just because there are duplicate records on our system because of the identity that Chidima's mom stole. But all the focus is on who? Chidima. It's worth saying this is not just happening in a vacuum. South Africa is in the middle of a serious wave of anti-immigration sentiment right now. In the middle of groups such as Operation Dudula and Mach have organized around demands for stricter immigration enforcement, arguing the government has failed to protect citizens' access to jobs and services. That's what they are claiming. They have pushed the mass deportations deadlines as a result. Thousands of Nigerians, Malawians, and other nationalities already left the country. Amid threats and violence, Nigerian government has formally protected the treatment of its nationals. It has formally protected the treatment of its nationals. Which means, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? Whatever a court eventually decides with Chidima's case, it's not going to be read as a narrow ruling by the public. It's going to be read as a symbol. It is going to be read as a symbol. Either proof the system is finally enforcing law, or proof it's overreaching. And it's worth being precise about what actually is being decided. Nobody disputes she was blameless as an infant in 2001. Nobody disputes that. What's actually before the court now is her own alleged conduct as an adult. Her own alleged conduct as an adult. The fraudulent bank statement, the prohibited person status, the illegal re-entry into the country. That's a different question entirely. And conflating the two makes it sound simpler than it actually is. The reality legally is it's probably narrower than either side wants it to be. It's probably narrower than either side wants it to be. South African law doesn't grant automatic citizenship just because you were born in South Africa. In this case, it's likely it won't change that. It won't change that principle. It won't change that principle either way. It won't change that principle either way. It turns on much more specific questions about her mother's documents. The process Home Affairs followed decades later. A woman who did nothing wrong as an infant is facing serious separate allegations of her own. The mother under criminal investigations, a country in the middle of a genuine immigration crisis. I mean, like a country in the middle of a genuine immigration crisis. And somewhere in all of it, a real victim who has never been named. There was never a headline about her. Not a single rand was ever given for her restitution. For me, I'm saying that's the story real here. Not who deserves the crown, Not who deserves the crown, but who never got asked to the stage. Not who deserves the crown, who never got asked to the stage. Yeah, thank you, South Africa. My heart is heavy because I think she deserves more than what she has been handed to her. She deserves our voices. She deserves to know that South Africa stands behind her, beside her, before her. And that's me, your girl Tandelicious. Follow me if you like. And I will be announcing the name of my podcast soon. So be on the outlook for the official announcement. Think about this. What if this was the outcome? Chidima gets citizenship or residence, and then also for her child, so they become South African citizens. Fast forward 30 years later, Chidima's child becomes a president. Remember, the child's father is Nigerian, Chidima is Nigerian, and now her child becomes the president. That would be a president of 100% Nigerian blood, Nigerian origin. So we better pray that Chidima does not get no South African citizenship. Think about it. It can happen. She gets a citizenship, a child gets a citizenship, 20 years later, the child becomes a South African president, and both the mother and the father and the child are all Nigerian. Think about that.